Reginald Jr. was a deacon at the church?
A deacon at the church? Make matters even worse than that. You got Rico.
I'm going to show you how to create a realistic book cover mock-up template.
And that's other gang members had. Now, they should let Puffy go. Because, according to y'all paperwork, 100% put the paperwork up there. According to that, the gang members was taking money from the whole different state, Memphis to get that, and putting them $3 million in your father's bank account. Not yours, not your wife, not theirs, your father's. And your father got no time. You did what? 6, 7, 8 months? At the same time, let's walk it all back. How was you living before I gave your fat ass a job doing security at Death Row?
Retired LA County Sheriff's Lieutenant and his son, a one-time cop with the Compton Police Department, have been indicted on federal drug trafficking and money laundering charges. Prosecutors say Reggie Wright Sr. and his son, Reggie Wright Jr., are both members of the Grape Street Crips gang.
Suge Knight lives over in this area here, over on this side of town.
That's Reggie Wright Sr. in the documentary Biggie and Tupac, a look at the life and deaths of rappers Notorious B.I.G. and Tupac Shakur.
When Tupac was killed, these guys, took offense to that. And that's when we had the retaliation.
Wright Sr. retired from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department in 2014 and previously worked in a gang unit for the Compton Police Department.
Reggie was the most cheerful gang officer we'd ever met.
So you said the mob started here? It was.
Well, actually, this house right here to my right is one of the leaders of it. Used to live. These kids. These are the good guys on the street. They don't get in any trouble, right, guys?
He and his son, Reggie Wright Jr., were both arrested last week in Southern California on federal drug trafficking and money laundering charges out of Memphis, Tennessee. Prosecutors say the father and son are among 22 gang members and gang associates responsible for running a drug pipeline from Los Angeles to a gang in Memphis. The drugs include heroin, marijuana, meth, and cocaine. Reggie Wright Jr. also worked at Compton PD, but later left law enforcement to work for Suge Knight and Death Row Records. Suge Knight is currently awaiting trial on murder charges after he barreled his truck into 2 men in a Compton parking lot. He's pleaded not guilty. Reggie Wright Sr. and Reggie Wright Jr. have not yet entered pleas. Reggie Wright Sr.'s attorney tells Eyewitness News that his client is not a member of the Grape Street Crips gang. Both father and son are out on bail and being monitored with ankle bracelets.
Ties to multiple gangs and a Mexican cartel busted. A multi-state drug ring with ties to multiple gangs and a Mexican cartel busted up in Memphis.
We're talking about 22 people were indicted this morning. The charges, and there are plenty of them, include drugs and money laundering.
Police confiscated more than 46 pounds of drugs. We have also learned the bust netted members of both the Grape Street Crips and the Petterol Mafia gangs.
Fox 13's chief investigative reporter Jim Spiewak live downtown. And Jim, this investigation just didn't happen overnight.
It certainly did not. This has been going on since at least 2014. We learned here in the federal building behind me a little earlier today. Fast forward to today, we now know 22 people have been indicted. 16 of those people we know live right here in the Mid-South. Federal prosecutors are accusing 22 gang members of shipping money through the mail from Memphis, 1,800 miles away to Los Angeles, California. Prosecutors go on to allege meth, heroin, cocaine, pills, and pot were all sent back to be sold here. It's a case acting U.S. Attorney Larry Lorenzi calls unusual.
The drugs that were sent to Memphis was a smorgasbord of drugs.
Investigators say 17 of the people are members of the Memphis Petterol Mafia, a local street gang that sells several kinds of drugs. The investigation started years ago when police found out gangs were selling drugs around the Bella Vista apartments. The investigation picked off at least one top-level OG.
It has stopped the pipeline where drugs freely flowed between California in Memphis.
Also indicted was Eric Avendado, who investigators say is connected to a Mexican cartel, but would not say which one.
They are using a variety of ways to move the drugs into Memphis.
I asked Lorenzi if an informant was used to help crack the years-long case.
We can't speak to the actual facts of the case or the actual techniques that were used to investigate it. Good question, though.
What Lorenzi did say is that an alleged dangerous drug pipeline here in Memphis is now busted up.
Exactly. I mean, going through this, I could see the holes in this theory.
Oh, that's why I throw jabs at Russell Poole. Ultimately, at the end, he got it right.
Which was?
But who he believes was responsible for the shooting of Biggie.
And he thought it was who?
I don't know. You know.
Poochie?
Poochie.
Yeah.
No.
No? Suge.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Russell got it right before he died.
No? Suge.
Oh, exactly.
Okay.
But building up to that, you know how we used to get in trouble with Mal and the teacher said, show your work?
Yeah.
He didn't show his work right.
Right. Well, we had put up another deep dive episode where we talked about the Impala, right? Because there was, essentially the witnesses were all saying that Impala was the one that shot up Biggie's car.
They were in my house behind the Impala.
Right.
Yeah.
And they found Impala in Keefe's, backyard.
Correct.
They realized it was not related. The color that people were saying was slightly different. People were saying black, some people were saying dark green. There was cars that were like burgundy and so forth. But this was at night. It's a chaotic situation. But then at the end of that deep dive, he had posted some pictures that showed an Impala parked at Suge's auto body shop. Now, is it the same Impala? We're not saying it is. I mean, Mike Dorsey didn't say it is. I wasn't involved in this thing. But, it is suspicious.
Bro.
Yeah.
When I say my house got raided, I'm the one that they duped me into turning in Suge's Impala.
So you're the one that said that the Impala was over there?
No. The burgundy Impala that was Suge, the one with the rounds and all that.
Yeah.
I had possession of that Impala.
Oh, okay.
I was getting it transferred over to one of his friends' name. I forgot. Mr. Lay's name.
Okay.
I was getting the transfer from Death Row or Suge's name to Mr. Lay's name. And they had the guy that I was using, the DMV, it was like a company that did transfers of titles over for you. They had that guy tell me that DMV wanted to come down and inspect the car. When it actually was LAPD detective Russell Poole wanted possession of the car.
Okay.
And so, luckily to me, I didn't have them come where I had the cars were, because that's where I had all the shit cars. But I had it towed from that location to the office. And that's at that time when they raided my house, Mr. Lay's mother's house, or grandmother's house, and Death Row offices. And you can see on the news, on the camera, the car pulling up while they raiding the location. They call on the tow truck because the news was out there and everything, pulling up. And it was just all a ruse to get the car there, because they wanted to check it for ballistics and stuff.
And did they check it?
They checked it for ballistics, took it into custody for about a week, and they released it to us.
Okay, so they found nothing. They found
nothing.
No residue or whatever
Nothing.
else. So chances are that Impala was not the
Had
same.
nothing to do with it. And that sure wouldn't have given me permission to release it, because, anything I did, I got permission. So my point is, if he thought that Impala was involved, or he had allowed somebody to use it, he would have told me, no, don't
Yeah.
get rid of that car.
Well, if you hire someone to kill one of the most popular people on the planet,
use them. Your car.
you won't go and take that car and then park it in your body shop. Like, that just seems insane.
Yeah, and that part too.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and that's not where I had his cars at. I had it at a spot in Arleta.
Yeah.
A storage there.
Yeah.
But again, LAPD is sitting on a major piece of the puzzle.
And why haven't they done anything about it?
You know what? I don't know. Why was Russell Poole taken off the case when he originally brought, hey, Chief, there's corruption, stuff's been going long gone in the department. Let's move Russell somewhere else. You know what I'm saying? Why are a lot of things done?
Resnick was all involved. They were trying to kill me too, but see, because Perez and Resnick was good friends, and Perez and Sarita and Reg is great friends, and so all those three together was trying to plot,
Yeah, exactly. Russell got it right before he died.
And you were actually in the Tupac incident and the Tyson fight. You were actually...
Can I cuss?
Go ahead.
Hell no.
Well, you were physically in... You weren't at the event. Were you in Vegas at all? No.
I
No?
was
Okay.
nowhere near
Okay. So
but
let me start.
I'm reacting to that because I've heard some podcasts and people swearing up and down I was there and I kicked and I was securing somebody. I was at home.
Okay. So we have that rumor filled out.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Well, your son was in Las Vegas.
Yes.
When this was happening.
He was working security.
So Tupac and the Death Row entourage were in Las Vegas to watch the Tyson fight. We interviewed Mike Tyson, and Mike had actually begged Tupac to come down to watch the fight because he had done a song for him that he was going to come out to and everything else like that. After the fight, they're in the MGM lobby. They see Orlando Anderson. Trayvon tells the people around him, hey, that's one of the guys that jumped me.
And Tupac, right?
And told that to Tupac. Tupac made a beeline right to Orlando, ran up to him, punched him, at which point Suge and Buntry and all these other guys jumped in, started stomping out Orlando. Then they leave. Hours later, based on my interview with Keefe D, they went and got a bunch of guns, started driving around, looking for Tupac. They go to Club 662. He's not there. I think Mob James, who was there.
So I think Buntry or somebody saw him.
Saw him, yeah. Say, hey, these guys are in the parking lot and so forth. So, let everyone know. And then they end up running into the car with Tupac and Suge. Someone in the car opens fire. They say it's Orlando, and Tupac gets killed. Now, in this car was 4 people, the car that did the shooting. It was Keefe D, Orlando Anderson,
correct,
Terrence Brown, a.k.a. Bubble Up,
yeah,
and DeAndre Smith, a.k.a. Big Andre. You already knew about Orlando. Keefe D you didn't really know about, though, from what I understand.
No, I really didn't have that much deal because he was a dope man. He wasn't no gang man. And I didn't deal with dope that much at all. Just only when they crossed gang investigation, basically.
Okay. What about Terrence Brown?
Knew of him, yes.
Okay. And what was he known for?
He was a Southside Crip, a rider. When I say rider, I mean involved. Wouldn't mind doing some shooting, putting some work in.
Okay.
He, Dre, and Orlando.
And DeAndre Smith, did you know him?
Yeah, that's Dre.
Dre, okay.
That's Dre.
Okay. And what was he known for?
He was a rider. But I used to call him Lando's bodyguard because Dre was Big Dre. He was big. I knew his father and everything since he was young. He's a big dude, but he was hard. But I knew him through Orlando, because things were going on that they were doing aside from that incident that we're talking about.
Right. And DeAndre Smith ended up dying from a heart attack in 2004.
Yes.
Terrence Brown ended up getting killed in a dispensary in 2019.
I heard about that.
And of course, Orlando Anderson gets killed. So the only person that's still alive in that car is Keefe D. What had happened? At that point, no one really knew, no one had any information right after the shooting happened. But you have all these ties into all these different gang members in Compton. And did you actually have informants and so forth that are working for you at the time?
Yeah, well, Reggie called me a couple hours after the shooting had occurred. They were at the scene and Reggie went to the hospital. And he called me. I was at home, sleep, not in Vegas. And then Reggie called me and said, hey, Dad, Tupac and Suge just got shot. And then he told me he thought Tupac was dead. And he said Suge was okay. He had got grazed. And they're investigating it all. And then he told me basically who he had believed or was hearing was involved because he wasn't there at the shooting.
Yeah.
He was told, and he was told me it was Southside and how it happened, and they were in the car and all that. So we immediately started investigating that the next day, what the information Reggie was giving me.
Okay.
I tried to get the information to Las Vegas PD as Reggie was telling me, but when they heard the name Reginald Wright, knowing from the scene there was a security Reginald Wright at the scene, former Compton PD, they conflated that. They came up with that was me. And so when I was calling to try to give them information, they didn't want to deal with me.
Huh.
So, and later on, when it got deeper, we started having shootings the next day between Mob and Ludus and Southside. Eventually, we had to start investigating that, but the chief took me off the case because of the conflict. Because,
Months. Cause they was coming. It was coming like a mother talking shit. You never getting out, woo woo. So, once Rafael Perez broke in there and stole that motherfucking shit, then I seen the investigation was going towards the cops. We want the cops. We don't want you, KPD. Like, you tell us about the cops. I know it's a lot of crooked cops. And I could have turned in them Reggie, them David Mack, them. You know what I'm saying? I didn't say a motherfucking thing, but their whole focus was turned to the cops. Yeah, once Rafael Perez broke in the evidence room, yeah, they whole investigation, cause they was coming to see me, trying to get. They said, "You the rapper killer." They said, "You killed Tupac and Biggie." Like, damn, ain't killed no Tupac or Biggie. Yeah, and they like, "You ain't ever getting out." Yeah.
Do you, based on what you know, do you think that that's the person who killed Biggie, or do you think it was someone else?
I think the Popo.
Okay. You think it was the police?
Yeah.
So you know.
I think it's Suge boys. I think it was Suge police friends.
Okay.
His crew.
Right, because at one point you were locked up with David Mack.
Yes.
David Mack was allegedly affiliated with Death Row. Well, in 2002, there was an incident when Buntree, who's Mob James's brother, got killed.
Yeah.
Tell me about how you're connected to this whole story.
Boy, it's amazing. I've heard some fantasies or some people making up stuff. According to what I heard, they said that I was in the car with Buntree in the truck, the Tahoe, with Buntree when he stopped at the gas station to get gas, and I was supposed to be with him in the car. I went in to pay for the gas, and when I came out, the guys were shooting up Buntree, and I refused to shoot because I should have had a gun, and I ran. That's the story. Well, let me tell you the true story.
Let's hear it.
On the day that Buntree got shot, it was early morning, 9 o'clock, 8 or 9. I was working at Twin Towers facility for the sheriff department, and I got home from work about 6 or 7, got in bed in Chino Hills, mind you, and about 9:30, I get a call from the captain of the sheriff's station, Cecil Rambo, who I knew personally and all, because he heard from the sergeant at the scene that the truck of the victim that had got shot at this gas station was registered to Reggie Wright. It didn't say of Death Row, although it was a Death Row vehicle in Reggie Jr.'s name. The driver was shot at the scene and somebody ran. And I said, Cecil, how the heck I get here if I had anything? That ain't me. That's Reggie's vehicle. It's in his name, but it belongs to Death Row. Buntry has been driving it for a while. Reggie has been trying to catch up with Buntry to get the truck back because that's when Death Row was kind of breaking up, so he can get it out of his name. I'm sure Reggie was nowhere around it. So he told me to call his sergeant at the scene. And I called her at the scene, and that's when she asked me, do you know who driving this truck? And I said, Buntry, and I described him. So she was convinced that was the victim laying there. She said, well, where were you here or something? I go, what do you mean here? I'm at home, in Chino Hill. She said, well, somebody ran from the truck. It's probably your son. And I basically said to her, okay, who is the person that ran? What is his description? She almost said the male usual, but she caught herself and she said, he was about, 5'10", 5'11", 170 pounds, young and running. At the time, Reggie was about 5'5", about 280 pounds or something. I said, that wasn't Reggie. I told you, Reggie don't even deal with that truck. He couldn't have ran from that scene if he wanted to, basically. I just kind of said that. But anyway, eventually she wanted to talk to Reggie and all that. And I called Reggie up. He was somewhere in Inglewood or something, and he didn't know about it. And I told him what happened. And so I guess he subsequently got it with his attorney and went and talked to her about the vehicle. But the story about me there, I got the best alibi in the world. I got the captain of the police department who called me at home knowing I was in Chino Hills within an hour of the shooting, But them theorists, they come up with all kind of make-believe.
Right. And this was around the time when a lot of the Bloods associated with Death Row were starting to turn on each other.
Yes, sir.
And Buntry was only one of the many people who got killed during this time.
Blood on blood. Well, actually, closer than that. Well, blood on blood. Because there was a lot of Fruitown and looters and all them going at each other. And it was all dope related, mostly. Mostly.
Right. Well, that next year, 1999, there was a Compton Police corruption report. And you and your son were tied into this report in terms of 200 kilos of missing cocaine?
Heck no.
You know what I'm talking about?
I ain't never been investigated by no missing cocaine.
Members of our department.
Yeah. Members of our department above me were accused of being involved in that, what turned out to be untrue. But Reggie and I was never part of that. I never had no dope connection to have access, nor did Reggie ever have to be caught up. And that's the first I'm hearing of anything like that. I don't know where that came from.
There's an article about it. Okay, and there was also something about a gun that went missing that ended up in Death Row at one point. And no?
It's so many different people come up with all these theories and beliefs and all this kind of stuff. And it was a gun or something that came out of property that was involved in a Long Beach PD also shooting. That came
out. A Long
out.
Beach police officer got
shot
with a gun that was missing.
That should have been, according to their investigation, in property. How it got out of property, I don't know. Now, I do remember, since you kind of helped my recollection, how a mayor or somebody at the time was getting information that gun was taken out of property by me or somebody, or given to gang members who subsequently shot the police officer.
Yeah.
But I think they interviewed the gang member at some point to investigate. Said, Reggie, he gave me no gun. It's a lot of theories.
Well, that was sort of a preface to what happened in 2000, because essentially there was like 8 murders that happened in 10 days in July of 2000, and the Compton City Council ended up having a vote and actually disintegrated Compton PD.
Yeah, that ain't had anything to do with no guns or directly. The Compton City Council were entertaining changing the enforcement to the sheriff department before I joined. But it really got hot with Omar Bradley's council of going sheriff. But that started even before all this Tupac stuff. So No, it wasn't no incident that I'm aware of that the reason, the catalyst for going sheriff. No, no, that's wrong.
Okay. Well, but ultimately Compton PD went away and it became part of the sheriff's department.
They made it merge us into the sheriff's department in September of 2000.
Right. And were you already a captain at this point, or?
I was acting captain doing before the transition over to the sheriff department for about 9 months, because they had some internal council concerns about the administration and made some changes.
Okay. And did you have an issue with that? Because, like you just said, half the guys that Suge had around him, you were working cases on them. Now your son is now in bed with these guys.
Not necessarily in bed with them, because you have to know the situation to understand the involvement. Suge getting highly recognized and making a lot of money and stuff in the hood, if you follow that type of stuff, you can't make money in the hood and not take care of the shot callers in the hood. You got to ingratiate them some kind of way. So that's what Suge was doing. But what Suge wanted to do and knew he had to do was get some security around him that was sort of licensed and actually security, not just my little hit crew. So that's why he wanted to get regular cops involved. And that's how Reggie got involved. And when I found out that Reggie was actually doing some video shoots as security for Suge, naturally I had that conversation with him. Hey man, I don't think this is a good thing, because he was still regular police. And he was using Compton police officers, young ones, to work on those details. And the chief wasn't aware of it. All of a sudden that started getting ugly, the conflict there. So naturally, I didn't particularly care for him to do it. But shoot, he was 35, 40 years old at the time, starting a business. So I didn't get involved with him. I just told him he just need to be careful. So they were like, how would you say, the Death Row Security, it was Right Way Security was the name of his agency. They were like, I always referred to like the legal security, and then you had your gang entourage.
Right, and Mob James was the one that came in and brought basically the street security, all the Mob Piru guys and so
There
forth.
you go.
Okay.
He was one of the main ones, not necessarily the main one.
Yeah. And were you hearing about violent incidents coming out of death row? People getting beat up and everything else like that? Or was that really more within Reggie's sort of circumference?
No. Well, these were things Suge and his little, like you say, street security were doing. But all that never came to the police attention. You understand what I'm saying? I had some incidents that happened involving